The rise of a revolutionary mind. When Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a quiet but fierce patriot, rose to power in Burkina Faso, few in the western corridors of power anticipated the storm he was about to unleash. But in a world suffocated by neo-colonial strings, resource exploitation, and manufactured dependency, Traoré broke free. What followed wasn't just defiance, it was innovation, independence, and an African renaissance the West could neither predict nor control. These are the 7 monumental projects that not only shook Western strongholds to the core but left European leaders scrambling to catch up. Each initiative not only empowered Burkina Faso but sent a clear, thunderous message: Africa is done being a pawn. It's becoming the player. The sovereign gold bank, turning dirt into destiny. In the heart of West Africa, where Western mining giants once extracted gold with impunity, Traoré dropped the first bombshell: the creation of a sovereign gold bank, fully state-owned and operated. He nationalized key gold mines and diverted the revenue not to offshore accounts but to infrastructure, hospitals, and education, a move that sent shockwaves through French conglomerates and Swiss banking elites. Even more astonishing, Burkina Faso began backing its currency with physical gold reserves, making its economy more stable than several EU nations. European analysts scoffed, until Burkina Faso's inflation dropped and public trust surged. The Pan-African cyber grid, outsmarting Silicon Valley. While Europe still debates digital sovereignty and remains tethered to American tech giants, Traoré partnered with local developers, African tech innovators, and allies like Mali and Guinea to launch the Pan-African cyber grid, a revolutionary, encrypted internet backbone independent of Western infrastructure. With private African servers, a secure messaging network, and blockchain integration for governance, this project disrupted Western data mining operations and cut off the NSA's invisible leash. Burkina Faso now runs on digital freedom, while Europe remains under Google's shadow. The Green Sahara Project, greener than Paris, bolder than Berlin. What began as a national reforestation campaign turned into a continental green revolution. Traoré led a massive, African-led initiative to reclaim the encroaching Sahel Desert using ancient techniques, drone-assisted planting, and solar-powered irrigation systems. The Green Sahara Project became the world's largest climate adaptation campaign. In contrast, while the EU issued climate reports and debated carbon credits, Burkina Faso was planting 10 million trees a month, revitalizing dead soils, and exporting eco-technology. Burkina Faso began exporting food and clean energy, and soon Europe looked less like the future and more like the past. The African Military Academy, a new generation of anti-colonial commanders. With NATO quietly monitoring his every move, Traoré made his boldest strike against foreign military control. He opened the African Military Academy of Sovereignty and Strategy, AMAS. Here, African soldiers from 20-plus nations are trained not in Western war doctrine, but in African defense, guerrilla strategy, and anti-imperial resistance. Classes include resource defense, psychological warfare, African political philosophy, and drone engineering. The West shuddered. They saw the rise of a new military doctrine, one that could no longer be manipulated with aid, weapons sales, or UN mandates. The Continental Resource Exchange. No more franc, no more euro. Traoré's fifth project made Western economists break into cold sweats. He spearheaded the launch of the Continental Resource Exchange, CREX, an inter-African platform where nations trade resources using African currencies, gold, or barter, completely bypassing the CFA franc, the euro, and the US dollar. Oil for cobalt, gold for rice, electricity for iron. No middlemen. No IMF. No World Bank. Burkina Faso emerged as a regional trade anchor, its economy swelling as foreign reserves poured in, not from Europe, but from Africa itself. Paris was paralyzed. Brussels was bewildered. Traoré simply smiled. The national intelligence shield, digital independence at all costs. The West had long relied on surveillance, covert diplomacy, and digital infiltration to maintain control. But Traoré, a former soldier and a man of sharp awareness, knew this too well. So he launched NIS, the National Intelligence Shield, a fusion of cybersecurity, counter-surveillance, and satellite monitoring, built with African engineers and partners from Russia, China, and India, Traoré created a fortress of intelligence that Western agencies couldn't penetrate. Burkina Faso no longer leaks state secrets. No Western drone flies undetected. And every external operation is intercepted and neutralized, often before it begins. Western intelligence officials called it a digital iron curtain. Traoré called it self-defense. The people's economy, from villages to vanguard. The final and perhaps most profound blow came not from machines, but from human empowerment. Traoré instituted the People's Economy Initiative, redirecting national focus to agriculture, local production, cooperative ownership, and artisanal industry. He cut foreign NGOs by 70%, redirected their roles to African-run alternatives, and turned villages into microeconomies. Farmers were given land rights, tools, training, and direct access to state markets. Suddenly, Burkina Faso was producing what it once imported: soap, medicine, bicycles, school supplies, fabrics. And exporting dignity. Europe, in its economic anxiety and outsourcing crisis, looked on in stunned disbelief. Burkina Faso wasn't surviving, it was thriving. All without the aid they once demanded. A thunder in the West. Across Europe, think tanks issued reports. Newsrooms whispered of the Traoré effect. Military analysts updated threat levels. Financial institutions began hedging for African unpredictability. But in Ouagadougou, Traoré remained silent, steady, focused. He wasn't looking for applause or war. He was building a future, African-led, African-made, and African-owned. The 7 projects that made the West tremble weren't just programs. They were declarations of sovereignty, of innovation, of rebirth, and above all, of a continent finally rising, not with Western permission, but with unshakable African power. After Traoré's 7 thunderous projects, Burkina Faso no longer stood in the shadow of France. It had become a torch for a continental awakening. And just as the West was catching its breath, more tremors began. This time, the quake wasn't limited to Africa. It cracked global systems, shook diplomatic alliances, and inspired liberation movements from Haiti to Papua New Guinea. As Traoré once said, "I am not trying to be better than Europe. I am trying to be free, and freedom is always more powerful than comfort." The Burkinabe Space Initiative. The sky is not colonial. What the West dismissed as impossible became one of the most humbling moments in recent history. Traoré, in collaboration with African engineers, launched BurkinaSat-1, the country's first satellite. But he didn't stop there. He revealed plans for a Pan-African space research hub focused on agricultural climate monitoring, military communication encryption, African astrophysics education, autonomous drone defense networks. When a French journalist mocked the plan as ambitious for a country with no space history, Traoré responded, "We had no chains in our history either, until you brought them. Let us now explore the heavens without permission." Global reaction. Macron, this level of militarized independence is deeply concerning. Putin, Traoré understands what it means to be sovereign in a multipolar world. South African scientists, he's inspiring a generational shift in African science. The Pan-African Broadcasting Alliance, media without a master. While Western media continued to portray African uprisings as chaos, Traoré unveiled the Pan-African Broadcasting Alliance, PABA, a network of African-owned radio, TV, and digital platforms translating African stories into 15+ languages. The content? History told by Africans, news reported by African journalists, and debates framed by African values. PABA soon reached 28 countries, making it the largest independent African news network in history, bypassing CNN, BBC, and France 24. "We've had enough of your cameras showing our pain. Now we will hold the lens." Ibrahim Traoré. Global reaction. UNESCO. A media revolution is taking place. It is no longer Western-led. CNN internal memo. Expect declining viewership in West Africa. Al Jazeera Africa. We welcome the competition. It's long overdue. The Continental Youth Corps, Africa's new vanguard. Knowing Africa's strength lies in its youth, Traoré launched the Continental Youth Corps, CYC, a training and development program that mixes military discipline, agricultural innovation, political education, and digital skills. Every young person who joined received free education, land access or startup capital, a 3-year plan for self-sufficiency. CYC alumni have become farmers, engineers, coders, and governors, loyal not to foreign NGOs but to the vision of a sovereign Africa. Europe trains its youth to inherit power. Africa must train its youth to build it. Ibrahim Traoré. Global reaction. Joe Biden. We're seeing the emergence of an alternative development model, and it's threatening old norms. African Union. Traoré is educating the next Nkrumahs and Sankaras. World Bank. This undermines our vocational aid programs. Anti-imperial education reform. Curriculum for consciousness. Traoré enacted a bold reform that removed colonial authors, outdated economic theories, and foreign-centered histories from schools. Instead, students now study African political philosophy, revolutionary literature, decolonized economics, agro-industrial strategy. University programs began offering degrees in Pan-African governance and resource sovereignty. If our minds remain colonized, then our hands will always serve others. Ibrahim Traoré. Global reaction. French Education Ministry. Dangerous revisionism. Harvard professor, off record, he's creating citizens who think independently, and that scares institutions like ours. Students in Senegal and DRC, we want Traoré's textbooks. The Silent Alliance. A secret pact that broke the West's monopoly. While the world speculated on alliances, Traoré quietly brokered a mutual defense pact between Mali, Guinea, Niger, and Burkina Faso, known as the Silent Alliance. The agreement stated, an attack on one is an attack on all. Joint military exercises. Shared intelligence. Collective economic retaliation if sanctions are imposed. When ECOWAS, backed by the EU, threatened sanctions over military transitions, Traoré responded not with words, but with a joint economic blockade on foreign mining operations. Billions in revenue losses followed. You brought NATO. We bring brothers. Global reaction. ECOWAS. This level of defiance is unprecedented. France's Total Energies. Operational chaos in the Sahel. Chad and Togo quietly requested observer status in the alliance. The Grand Repatriation Program. Calling the diaspora home. Traoré sent shockwaves through the African diaspora when he launched the Grand Repatriation Program, offering land, citizenship, and investment support to any African-descended person returning from the Americas, Caribbean, or Europe. Within a year, over 17,000 black professionals repatriated. Dozens of tech startups and agro-industries were launched. Hollywood actors and athletes began voicing support. They took you. Now we welcome you. Come not as visitors, but as visionaries. Ibrahim Traoré. Global reaction. French Interior Minister. This may lead to destabilizing dual allegiances. Caribbean leaders. We are entering dialogue with Traoré's office. African Americans. This is the invitation our ancestors waited 400 years for. A message to the world. When asked by a BBC journalist if he was afraid of assassination, Traoré calmly replied, they can kill a man, but not a movement, not an idea, and certainly not a continent. Ibrahim Traoré is no longer seen as just the leader of Burkina Faso. To many, he has become the standard bearer of the new Africa, bold, sovereign, united, and unstoppable.